Welcome, everybody, on your own screens. Welcome to our show. Today, we are joined by Josh Greenbaum, an industry analyst and consultant with 30 years of experience in the enterprise software market. But not only that, Josh's role at enterprise application consulting in these over 30 years is akin of a translator, bridging the gap between technology and people. He believes that technology can solve many business and social problems, but only if it's used correctly. Joshua works closely with end users and user groups, ensuring their voices are heard and their needs are met, not just the needs of the vendors. He also collaborates with vendors and service providers, helping them understand each other, the complexities of working with customers and speaking their language. His ultimate goal is to foster an ecosystem that prioritizes customer success. He's a backpacker, knowledgeable in playing the piano, and is a very knowledgeable and controversial spirited guy. We love to talk to and exchange views and observation. As we identified on some earlier shows how much we have in common and are aligned on our approach to bridge those gaps which are still existing between vendors and customers, we thought it was again time to talk about some of that nice stuff. We love to exchange our thoughts with him and with you as audience, and we encourage you to comment, ask, and be part of the whole discussion in that next 58 minutes. So stay tuned and go forward. And now the floor is yours, Joshua. Welcome, and please add if I have something left out. And
that was quite plenty. Yes, enough about me. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. It's great to be back, gentlemen. And I realize, and with those introductory photographs of you, everyone's looking like they're all dressed up with their suits and ties, and here we are, slightly more comfortable.
You feel free to send another picture.
Yeah, I can go get a tie. It's no problem.
I give all my ties to my son. So how should we get going here? I can just sort of turn on the rant machine and
we were starting in a bit in the direction that we have seen over the last 2 weeks and the months before, some interesting developments and around enterprise software implementation. And we came to the point that it would be interesting to talk a bit about what are the main mistakes vendors are making and what are the mistakes the customers are making. So that would be the starting point where I would like to kick it off and hand it over to you, as that ping pong discussion was quite fruitful.
Okay, great. And of course, we're not going to cover what mistakes we industry pundits are making, because we're infallible.
We don't make mistakes.
What mistakes are those?
We are moderating others people.
We're there to mistakes from.
We try to be the saviors, the deliverers of the, to call one of your buzzwords, Band-Aid, if they hurted each other a bit.
Let me start by talking quickly about this chart behind me, which I'll
please
out of the picture, and then we can, because this is sort of the overview of why we're here having this conversation. So this is a data set that I've been compiling for a number of years. I haven't updated it since 2019 because 2020 and the COVID economy kind of made everything look weird, and there's a few more years of good data since then that I can add to it. But the point remains the same, which is what we're plotting here is the growth in productivity versus the growth in IT spending. So the two, what is, I guess, the orange line is the growth in IT spending in the United States since the beginning of the century, and the gray line is an international growth in IT spending. Those are data points taken from the major analyst firms. They always publish that kind of stuff at the end of at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, with the projections. So I pulled that out of kind of the public domain, if you will. And then the blue line is the growth in actual productivity as measured by the Bureau of Labor Statistics here in the United States. It's a U.S. number, not a global number per se, though it represents data from a lot of U.S. companies that do business globally, so it's not a decent proxy. Basically, what we're seeing here is that productivity tends to grow no more than 2%, and often at times negatively. But it's a pretty the growth of productivity is pretty lame. The growth, if you're welcome to, you could enlarge this. Maybe folks can see a little bit better.
Blow it up.
Mea culpa.
Blow it up. Blow it up.
Embiggen.
Meanwhile, while productivity doesn't grow a hell of a lot, again, not much more than a couple of percentage points in any given year, IT spending grows tremendously. It was coming off a high in the beginning of the century of in the double digits, 12%. It sort of popped up 2011, close to 8 or 9%. There's a huge amount of growth in IT spending and zero, and that's the point I'm trying to emphasize, zero correlation in the growth of productivity. So that's my starting point. We spend a whole ton of money on IT all the time, but we don't have general productivity to show for it. So let's analyze, if you will. And this is Josh. I'm in cranky mode. We've established that. I decided I was going to rip the Band-Aid off was one of the metaphors that was used. But I'm just going to go for it. And we're all said with with love and respect to all the people and organizations that I'm about to insult. Let's start with the customers, because I think to a certain extent we always sort of point fingers at vendors, and Lord knows there's a lot of work to be done in the vendor community to do a better job serving the customers, but the customers bear responsibility. And I want to start there, because at this point, again, ripping that Band-Aid off includes the fact that we've been sort of giving customers a pass. The customer is, of course, the engine of the economy we all live and work in. So why would we want to insult the hand that feeds us, so to speak? But hell, why not? Let's do it. Because it takes three to really screw up an IT project. It takes a vendor who's going to maybe oversell and underdeliver. It takes a partner who takes that overselling and truly does make underdelivery a business model. But it takes a customer who's actually complacent and playing in that game. And so I'm going to push on customers first, then we'll pick on the vendors. So I'm going to maybe go through these 5 mistakes, my 5 biggest mistakes. I previewed them in the LinkedIn page. But let's just go through them, and please jump in and challenge me or chime in. Number 1, there is no senior exec in my company with the mandate and authority, important word, authority, to find and develop efficient end-to-end processes that drive efficiency across my silos. This is a really huge problem. If there's a lot of vendors that want to do this end-to-end process excellence, and we've got ServiceNow, we've got UiPath, Solaris, Signavio, acquired by SAP. So SAP is obviously big in the game. Zoho, with Zoho One, actually sort of says, heck, don't try to start from scratch and connect the silos. We'll give you unsiloed software that's sort of pre-connected. This is a huge issue. But even in the Zoho world, if I may say, when I go, I've been on a mission, Diogenes walking around the streets of Athens with a lamp looking for an honest man. I've been on a mission to find who are the people, who are the individuals in any given company who have the authority and the mandate to break the silos and build end-to-end processes. And that is not a job title. That is not a standard job function. There is no individual that you can identify. This is who does it. The folks who do it and they're successful at it, and therefore their companies are successful, and therefore they break out of this productivity gap problem. those individuals do it by dint of their personality, by their credential. Sometimes it's the CFO. Sometimes they have the blessing of the CFO. I talked to recently, actually, I'm going to plug Zoho just because I just talked to one of their customers recently. And, that individual, they just happened to let this really smart kid learn everything he could about Zoho. And when they realized how smart he was, I'm an old guy, so I get to call him a kid. He's not a kid. He's a grown man. But that he was able to build this and continue to build and roll out end-to-end processes in his organization. But this is really hard because there's nobody who has that role. The companies are siloed the way the vendors are siloed.
Let me challenge that a little. Isn't that the genuine job of a COO?
Or an owner? If
Or a
it's in-
CEO?
The COO isn't necessarily thinking that. I think you're right, but is the COO really thinking my business process is driven by technology, so my focus on process should be about technology?
No, but it's the other way around. The job description of the CEO, the COO is efficiency, process efficiency.
I'd like to think that's true. I think a lot of times the job of the COO is to put out fires.
You have to keep operating.
Depending on the organization, its history, and its size. You're absolutely right. Therefore, I threw in, because if we go for different sizes, an owner-driven private company is still another beast, where the man with the money, mostly the patron, to say so, is guiding the whole organization. And if he has not a culture that other opinions are allowed, it is he drives, and if he goes for a crash course to the wall, then everybody is in the same car and crashes in the wall. So
and some cars are just so are so fast they can blast through the wall.
Wow.
And you can find a lot of small companies that have just found a niche that's so valuable and remunerative, they can make a ton of mistakes, and as long as the times are good, none of this matters. It's when things get a little dodgy and a little tricky, then that product. But so I agree. I mean, I think, Thomas, you're right. I think that should be the COO's job. I personally would argue that we need to create, the VP of silo busting, the VP of process excellence.
Wow.
Because the COO has already got it. She or he's got this mandate already, which often is just, Marshall, I think you were nodding your head, putting out fires.
Yeah.
Getting shit done. That's not always the strategic vision we need for process excellence.
In the Swiss mentality, that is very much covered in the German saying, or the Swiss German saying, we are on a Feuerwehrübung, a fire brigade exercise. So they are always extinguishing existing fires, calming down, and getting that things are running anyhow. Yeah, not perfect.
And in some companies, they're so poorly run, they're actually, fighting fires with gasoline.
Yeah,
and I have seen that one too.
And then there are the ones who are built out of matchsticks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're right. And what we find in our this very complex economy we have emerged from quarantine into is it doesn't take a whole lot of fire to burn the place down. The sensitivity we have, particularly in the processes, to supply chain perturbations, to personnel problems, to all these things, we're on a knife's edge already.
Let me throw another branch into that thought.
Here we go.
So that's the definition of efficiency. So efficiency is defined as removing all redundancies. Means making it as cheap as possible. So cutting away all circuit breakers, so they are either running or they are either on the happy path, those processes, efficient processes, or they are broken.
Yeah, but efficiency is relative, right? I mean, we thought that just-in-time manufacturing was the most efficient thing ever. We loved just-in-time manufacturing until we realized that if we don't have a perfect supply chain, just-in-time is the most inefficient way to manufacture.
Yeah.
So
that's why the interpretation of efficiency, or should have said interpretation, not definition. The interpretation of efficiency is cheap as.
Yeah,
that's efficient.
it's complicated. But anyway, so we move on. I got 10 of these to go through, but we can come back to anyone we want.
I love that.
My second customer thing. Again, we're picking customers first. We're going to get to the vendors. Don't worry.
But the vendors are worrying.
They're worrying. No, they're trying. There's a lot of sincere efforts going on. Let's put it that way. There is no beef number two, or problem number two. There is no senior executive in my company with the mandate and authority to drive us towards a networked economy that uses advances in supply chain and ERP planning, visibility, and execution. This is a big, long sentence. To optimize our resources, our human resources, our capital resources, our partner network, and our customers, and streamline our processes. What that's saying is sort of the corollary to if I have a bunch of siloed processes in my own organization that aren't interconnected, my ability to interconnect to the outside economy is equally hampered. And that means that I'm going to miss a lot of the ability I have to use modern technology to be efficient. So for instance, there's some really cool stuff in the world of global track and trace. I can watch a pallet as it chugs along the Indian Ocean trying to get to a European or North American market. But if I don't have the interconnected business network concept in my company, when a typhoon wipes that ship out and it sinks to the bottom of the Indian Ocean, or just gets delayed by a week, I don't have the ability, the agility to efficiently, there's that word again, reconfigure my supply chain, reconfigure my business essentially to find another supplier, to keep my customer happy, to move forward despite that obstacle. And so the other thing that's happening is that while the vendors are, let's give SAP props. They've got the business network concept built out probably more than anyone else, but they're not the only ones thinking about business networks or enabling, components of a business network, a network economy to work. There is no senior exec with the title VP of Business Networks. There's no one to go to and say, who's got the strategic vision to build out your ability to manage the network economy and make use of all this data and all this information, all this visibility, the ability to plan. And if you don't have that, you're just missing this massive opportunity. You're another reason why we have this productivity gap. And I'll say, the fact that the VP of supply chain is sometimes not the VP of ERP, who's not sometimes the VP of planning, who's not necessarily the VP of HR, and these things really come back to haunt you because those internal inefficiencies, make it impossible to be efficient at the global scale. I'll shut up and you guys can now. Go ahead.
No need to say anything. So what I wonder is in that topic, so if you're talking networked economies, why not networked company? So there doesn't need to be the VP of anything or this, that, and whatnot that centralizes the whole stuff. If I have proper governance set up, proper set of KPIs set up that form a pyramid, and where the lower level KPIs support the higher level KPIs, whatever the highest level KPI is, probably the need for the CEO to have the highest possible salary. Okay, just kidding. Wow. But
we'll get that.
And on this, sorry, Marshall.
No. I was agreeing.
But what I observe is in this misery that there is no one who is raising his hand and taking the authority or the mandate or is driving such a project with a certain education and sense for the processes. That is the next one who is jumping in as he has taken then the responsibility to a certain degree, who is driving the working together within the company as part.
Right, the internal sort of process integration again.
Yeah. Right. And the thing is, why don't they do it? Because they honestly have sometimes not a clue, because it's grown from a little garden house to a skyscraper and they just lived on it. And the challenge is in those mandates I'm observing in last 3 months is that they ask consultant to give them some help and a little education. And sometimes they are adopting or are accepting guidance. But there are a lot of which come to the point that I have the aspect which worries me most. They are consultancy and hint resistant. They do not accept another opinion. They are not going for a cultural opening or education process, such as what do my competitors do? What do they smarter?
How do I work maybe with someone who's also my competitor? I mean, the problem with the networked economy concept is that you've got, as a vendor, we'll get to the vendors soon, but as a vendor, I've got to let my competitor in procurement, I'm not going to name any names, but we know who we're talking about, be part of my network, because X% of the suppliers and OEMs in that network are going to want to use that other piece of software. I've got to be open to that. I've got to be open to my world where as an OEM manufacturer, I may need to tap into a supplier who's actually a subsidiary of a competitor, but who's got the supply I want. This idea that it's a zero-sum game between vendors is the worst idea in the world when the result is that you lose a customer. And to me, that should be the, ultimately the network economy really should be there to serve the customer, and in doing so enable like a network of partners to do a good job, to make money. It's not these are not nonprofits, but to do it in a way that's most efficient on behalf of the customer. And companies don't like to cooperate. It's not necessarily in their nature. It's not even necessarily in their nature internally. If you were an American business executive and you followed Jack Welch off the cliff, at GE, the great god Jack Welch, what you found out very quickly is that his model for GE was a total dead end, because he built competing silos that did not integrate, did not work together, did not like each other. They compete. They were competitors for Daddy's love, for Daddy Jack Welch's love, and it turned out to be an absolute dead end. Hewlett Packard was set up that way too. This stupid idea of internal competition, we now know is a. But again, back to the point, we need an executive with a mandate. We need someone to say, my job, and it comes down from the board, is thou shalt build towards a network economy.
You still have organizations which are running like the described Jack Welch or HP model. If you go into software industry and you go for Italy, you find a very large and to a certain degree successful company called Reply. And they have all their replies for SAP, for Microsoft, for SAP, for God knows what, Salesforce as well. Yeah, and they're competing each other. I was stunned after the owner, female, described it to me and described it as a large success. I made this short decision, not my territory, not my world, not my ecosystem. I prefer working together, and in co-opetition, it's fine. It's working. Yeah.
Yeah, look at us. We should be deadly competitors. We shouldn't be talking to each other, right? Because we're all trying to be. Yeah. I don't know. We really screwed up here. Okay, let's go to number 3. Yeah, we must be doing something wrong. There is no senior exec in my company with a mandate to require change management to be the starting point for everything we do in technology. This is
why change management next to quality management. That's the first to cut off because it's cost.
It's a stupid, yeah, right. I mean, and they're quality management, and change management to me are very deeply intertwined.
Yeah,
you kind of have to do that. And again, mandate is the key here. This shouldn't be a term that needs to be mandated, but the fact is, most companies struggle with the concept, its execution, and its prioritization, as you said.
Yeah.
And you can see that my chart. That's what happens. You don't do change management right. You're going to implement a lot of software that people aren't going to use. They're not going to use it right. They're not going to be well trained for it. They won't be user. They won't see themselves in the software. They won't see their job as being reinforced by the software. And
that's not a theoretical. That's something that has been happening in companies for decades.
Yeah.
And is happening again with our trend to AI me. I don't know for what, but I want it.
Is that a rocket ship? That's not meant to be Boeing by any chance. No. Okay.
No, then it wouldn't fly.
No,
it would go like that.
Yeah, right. Well, the rocket ship
keeps on going up and coming down. It must be SpaceX.
We're not gonna
Yep. I think we can only agree to what Tara's saying. Yeah.
And if I've been in. I mean, we've all been in the room, right? Where there's like we're looking at a complete implementation failure. What happened? Well, you didn't. Well, I mean, there's one in particular. Where I talked to the SI. Well, you knew when you threw the switch on that your users weren't trained. Yeah. And he said, "Yeah, well, they wouldn't come to training." I said, "Why wouldn't they come to training?" Well, that's not my job.
Well,
then your job is to be sued for not meeting the deadline. I'll move on because I think. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Isn't it also part of the problem that whatever comes as new software solutions is often spec based on a process that already exists?
Well, ideally, I think I understand what you're saying. I think ideally, the best new software takes the thing you're already doing and does it better, faster, more efficiently.
Or differently, yeah.
But the problem is when it's different enough.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from. So usually, many of requirements documents that I do see basically codify the old process into the new software, which, well, of course, reduces the need for change management, but on the other hand, also
kills your productivity.
Kills your productivity right there, yeah, and leads to all the other problems that we counted so far.
Yeah, no, and that's it. And either you're taking the old process and making it happen in the new software, and you're destroying productivity, and you're not moving the needle anywhere, or you're saying, "Hey, everything we did before was stupid and useless. Here's how you're going to do process X right now, and good luck." Yeah. And then you throw the baby into the swimming pool, and they drop.
Yeah.
And someone has to go in and swim after them, pick them up.
With the baby. Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
right, number 4. We got to save time, equal time for the vendor. So
let's look into the next one. So the one's pretty.
The next one. My company has no comprehensive process for finding and working with the best partners in the primary vendor ecosystems that we depend on. This is a really big pet peeve of mine. I think, and this is I can pick on the vendors right now because this is their fault. They're always talking on keynote stage about the same 5 global SIs as the partner of choice, and of course, one of them in particular. I won't name any names, but there's only 5 of them. You can try all 5. You'll find which one it is real fast. You Google that company, and SAP ERP project failure. And just watch the screen roll by. These companies are not incented to succeed for anyone but themselves. And what happens is that I keep running into companies who are like, we are going to work with those are the guys we worked with before, or literally my CEO was out golfing with. Right. And the partner ecosystems are the most important component now of any vendor's strategy, and it's the one they neglect the most. But if you are going to, in the software as a service world that we are now in the cloud, if you're going to mandate that the core processes, the things that keep the lights on, are standardized, then your innovation isn't going to happen in your core anymore. It's going to happen on your edge. It's going to happen outside that core. That core isn't necessarily covered by your standard software. That's covered by the innovation that you can build on top of it that's specific to your business, your geography, your special needs. That's not necessarily going to come from a big, global SI partner sitting on stage who's basically trying to roll out massive projects. You're going to get that from a smart, nimble partner who knows their stuff.
Picking on vendors, continuing that, there is the same problem the other way around as well. If I purchase or subscribe to some software of some vendor or want to, if this is a new software for me or a new vendor for me, then I deliberately ask for a partner that does the implementation, unless the vendor does it themselves. So which may very well happen. Then the vendor better has an answer that is better than choose yourself.
Right.
So this is same problem from the other angle. So there needs to
be a strategic capability for the customer.
From both sides.
To do a good job with the vendor, with getting the right partners. And to really, again, think strategically about partners. Don't think knee-jerk. Don't think brand name. Thinking brand name is not strategic.
That pretty much means that the recommendations can't come from the board because the board is only looking a quarter ahead, a year ahead at most.
I hope not, but you're probably right. Right.
And the real challenge is that it's always a people's business. And if there are not people which have their heart and their brains at the right place and looking for the customer success and are driven by this and have some empathy and positive emotions on their end as well, then it's the greedy game and not the success game, so that all might win in the part.
So now we are plainly in the vendor territory, because Josh, if I see it correctly, this is one of which basically your first peeve on the vendor side, right?
Right. We'll get to it, but I just want to finish a thought, which is so I think we all know Bonnie Tinder from Raven Intel, right? Raven Intelligence is one of the few organizations. I'm going to just do a shameless plug for a friend of mine that goes out and rates partners. She's focused mostly on the HR space, Raven Intelligence. And the idea is that, she gets end users to actually rate their implementation and rate the partner. How did it go? You end up, there's a very infamous article that came out in Business Insider a while ago, which is, everybody hates Workday. I don't know if you all saw that. It was quite a little scandal. The New York Times referenced it in an article this weekend about why HR is so broken. And the truth is, people hate a piece of software mostly because the vendor screwed it up and didn't implement it right. And because Workday is one of the areas that Bonnie focuses on, she's done a really good job of collecting not just Workday, but other vendor partner profiles for these vendor ecosystems. And I think more and more customers have to think that way. I need to have the right partner, particularly for implementation, much less for innovation. And it's important to say, there's multiple different kinds of partners: implementation partner, ISV partner, tool partner. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and each one has a different function and needs to be chosen strategically. That's anyway.
And here goes Kiara.
Say again.
And there goes Kiara.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There she goes. Thank you.
She's doing the research for us. Yeah. Well done. Thank you.
She's of course an HR pro herself, so she read that article and yeah. Anyway, last one, and then we'll pick on the vendors a little bit more. But this is actually I'm also getting to picking on the vendors with this last one too. This is again for the customer, but neither our vendor nor our internal IT team has produced a comprehensive business case for moving to the cloud, but we're doing it anyway because everyone thinks we should. And I'm putting that out there because I think that, and obviously this is a big issue in the SAP space. Our friend John Reed and I just did a podcast with a partner, actually, Basis Technologies, about this. a webinar. I'm sorry, not a podcast. What's interesting to me is that there's a lot of there are a lot of really good business cases for moving to the cloud that don't necessarily get used or get thought of. It's very knee-jerk, if you will, towards the IT-centric thing of, it's going to be more efficient to upgrade. It's going to be more efficient to manage you, the customer. It's going to be more efficient on the vendor side for you to be in the cloud, as opposed to, I'm going to get stuff from being in the cloud that's going to directly benefit my business that couldn't be done otherwise. So if I'm, for instance, a mid-sized supplier to multiple product line, I may be selling, components that go into, aerospace and defense, that go into durable goods, medical equipment. I may be selling it to 3 different major supply chains in a business network that's managed in a cloud environment. That has a huge essential efficiency for me from a compliance standpoint. If that business network is set up correctly, I'm compliant once, and everybody in my supply chain can see that I meet that particular industry's regulatory requirements. I'm certified. That certification travels across the cloud with me. That's a huge internal efficiency, a business reason to be in the cloud. Localization is the same thing. If localization as a service is really a cloud function that doesn't get enough play, you are, as a cloud customer, insulated, but if you have the right vendor who does localization correctly, from regulatory changes in one of your key locations, because they're doing that job for you and publishing that to every one of their customers. There are good business cases for moving to the cloud. Everyone's a little sloppy and lazy about pushing it, and they're defaulting to, let's do the IT stuff, the IT reason, which ends up being more about vendor efficiency and less about customer efficiency.
Yeah. That's what I usually say about multi-tenancy. Multi-tenancy only serves the vendor.
Yeah.
The only one who benefits from it.
And it shouldn't be the case, but I think that, I would like to see, and I'm sort of pushing this really hard, I would like to see customers do a better job of being strategic about their business cases.
Yeah.
Because if they really are, now some of them are doing it, and they're running into a slight problem, which is that it turns out the business case means I've got to actually slow down my cloud migration.
Yeah.
I can't speed it up.
That's the same for the current hype, generative AI. I haven't seen a business case yet. And I haven't seen a vendor that was able to answer me the question what the benefit for their customers is in dollars.
The big benefit, the benefit that justifies the expense.
Yeah. So what is the costs are quite clear. How? So now
as I think it was the Goldman Sachs report said, what's the $1 trillion problem we're solving?
Yeah. It's high cost and little benefit. Yeah.
There was a big discussion based on not only that research, but there are 3 or 4 in the last months coming out. And there's a German newspaper, Handelsblatt, which has a weekly podcast on AI development. And one of the journalists which are participating and producing stuff made the very emotionally discussed with over 400 comments to his core article about, is it sustainability? Is it sustainable? Will it work? Is there any ROI? Is there any usefulness in all that big hush? And is it not only a run for something everybody wants to run with that train, try to catch it even in the last minute, not knowing where it is running to and not knowing if it has a benefit? And then back to Tom's question, yes, where is the beef? Where is the benefit in the job to be done approach? And then Mr. Kerkebaum simply asked, well, if he compares it with customer relationship management, there were some goes in some years till they were the first lighthouse projects one could show off. And they made an argument, such as there was in the University City of Tübingen, a German-wide AI conference. And there was a very critical guy who has received the Turing prize of this year. And he said, what are you talking about AI and usefulness? This is stupid as a 2-year-old kitten. So what you expect? A kitten is not dumb, but it has its own attitudes. So back to more serious statements, because there were a lot of knowledgeable, good statements, such as people which are trying to focus on a use case which is going to Thomas' direction, such as in the official business, state business driven, or on local, the Baden-Württemberg as one state. No, I was looking for the right word. They have, based on some stuff from Aleph Alpha, they call it F13. They are looking dedicatedly by process analysis where are processes we can speed up, which are regularly coming up again, and are time consuming. I call them the time vampires. Yeah. And they focus on these ones, go for that, and then go for the next one. And they estimate it as Aleph Alpha is not good for everything. But for that, Aleph Alpha is helping them really. And they can already prove, as they have 10 departments up and running, how they saved in time and where they could focus for the citizens with their more detailed questions and go into more detail in their questions and answer those and do some co-working instead of dumb formula exercising, crisscrossing, and analyzing what they have not filled properly in the form. Yeah.
Yeah. I call that taking the machine out of the human. Yeah, it's a good way.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking at the time. I want to get through I want to pick on the vendors because they deserve it.
Okay, so
because it's all okay. So let's go to my number one. I've said this many times. I will continue to say this until I retire and go sit on a beach somewhere. Customer success is measured by how Wall Street measures our success instead of by what really matters to customers. Yeah, and I'm just gonna say that customer success organizations in most vendor companies are a joke. I'm sorry, they're just not there for the customer.
That's fair.
And when you listen to quarterly reporting to Wall Street, when they talk about success, they're talking about, Ralph, they're talking about how much AI we sold, not whether anybody got any value for it. I think I just think that's pitiful, and I'm going to shut up because you guys, I'm sure, can add your disdain to that comment without me ranting too long.
Yeah, well, you're perfectly right. I mean, where is customer success organized? It's organized on the vendor's side.
In the sales department.
Probably in the sales department. So it means the customer is successful if they buy more from me. So they can't be biased.
If Wall Street thinks my stock pushes my stock up, then
so in general they can't be biased enough. So customer success essentially is partner work actually.
Yeah,
and that should be their job to make sure that they are at least less biased if they are not depending on one vendor only.
And if I see the title Customer Success Manager from one of the vendor folks, which I would say an account manager, not success manager, they are only interested to get their existing happy customer to a certain end to convince at least 10 others to buy in and do the same mistake, the same useful product.
We had that discussion with Noah and Nicole the other day as well. So the problem is how they are incentivized. So they're incentivized for the upsell, basically. Which
hang on, that's my point number 5.
Sorry, I'm jumping.
I'm going to say it, Thomas, because why don't we just get
I'm
that
jumping
out?
the queue here.
Easy does it. We go by the book.
Okay, my point number 5, but it's worth, you just said it, so let's say it. We deploy undertrained and poorly incentivized field sales forces who don't fully understand our customers, their industries, or their ecosystems in which they must function, and therefore have no way to have a stake in the success of our customers. I probably should have made that number 2.
Yeah,
right?
We should make that number 2. And we don't need experienced sales reps because we have ChatGPT.
That is brutal, and I don't go for that, as I train those people if they are letting me. But there must be some kind of a picture which is created by experience, and therefore I do not doubt Thomas' experience that he has over all these ages seen a lot of sales reps which behave exactly like that, and you give these fools a nice tool, and hopefully then there is coming something out which is useful.
I have a very simple solution to the problem. You don't get your bonus until the customer has passed a well-measured and well-thought-out success milestone.
Amen.
End of story. You're going to make that sale. You better not oversell it, because if that customer screws up, you're going to make salary this year.
Yeah.
And I think no vendor dares to do that, because they all think they're all, I don't know what they think. They think, they let these field sales forces control them. I think it's a riot. Who's really in charge here? I wish we could do that, because the correlator to all this is we got to dumb down our marketing message for the field sales team. They're not smart enough to carry too much complex stuff in their kit. So we have to make it really simple.
Yeah.
Honestly,
there was it again.
The kid.
Okay, the Band-Aid. That was a Band-Aid. All right. Because in the interest of time, I'm going to keep ranting along.
Yeah.
This is really going back to my first 2 points on the customer side. But we, the vendors, sell products in silos because that's the way we build the software, and in no way because that's the way the customers are supposed to succeed. And if we don't build it that way, we acquire it that way. And that's again, back to my slide behind me. That's the productivity problem we have.
It was quite obvious in SAP's case, right? So McDermott, I don't want to bash SAP now, but because they are doing a lot of things right. So, but if I'm looking into the last decade, 15 years, so they acquired a heck of a lot of software.
Yep.
A heck of a lot of very good software. And similar to Oracle and Salesforce and other companies, they struggle in creating a coherent whole out of that. And this lack of coherent whole then, results in a lack of consistent processes on the customer side.
And because they sell a CRM product or a CRM buyer, that company has a CRM silo that matches what was sold to them.
Yeah.
And that they, it's ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. I don't know if you know that from biology. I don't know how to translate that into German. God forbid, it's probably the same words. But the idea that that evolutionarily we evolved we look like the thing that we evolved from as we grow. We take these structures in the vendor side, which is I've got a CRM sales force with a CRM product selling to a CRM buyer. I've got an ERP product. ERP set, and the flip side is the company, the bigger the company does the same thing. Well, I'm going to have an ERP CIO. I'm going to have an CRM CIO. And Ralph, to your comment earlier, obviously the smaller companies get to hopefully break that down because they can't afford to silo. But that really works well more in the Mittelstand of the the DACH region. It's not working in the global economy necessarily. And you have obviously major German companies like like Bosch that that have to can't live that way. But anyway, Okay, I'm going to keep moving on because I see we're getting low here on time. A similar one again. Now we picked on the customers, and now we're going to turn. What we're doing is showing why it's the vendor's fault for what the customers are doing. Because point number 3 is that we tend to overly rely the vendor on large systems integrators and ignore the smaller, more valuable partners. And I already said that, so I think let me just move on.
Coming back on that integration part, we just found out that they buy silos which fit to their silos and their silos thinking. So it's not like the Borg, which do assimilation and proper integration. And now we come to the third point. I'm not a fan of the Borg, but they seems to go their science fiction like they have had their act together. So the missing
Mussolini made the trains run on time. That's still not an excuse for fascism. But yes, you're absolutely right.
The integration is now the challenge in the way that what I observe is that some smaller vendors which do it slower but with more brain and heart, such as they develop by themselves, and empathically go into the customer's shoes and do it a bit slower, less fancy, but very nicely operating and smoothly integrated. You share that?
It's a great thing. Okay. Yeah. 2 more, and then we're going to go. Number 4, we the vendor, we refuse to, I should have made this number 1. We refuse to comprehensively measure and report on implementation success, and therefore take no responsibility for project failure.
Of course we do. Implementation success is when I hit the go live button.
Yeah, right. Hallelujah. or when I book the revenue. Let's be really honest.
Oh, yeah, okay. didn't want to be that blunt. Didn't want to be that blunt.
And you know what's interesting is that right now, and I'm going to have to give SAP props for this as well, because they're really the only vendor right now that's really built out a technology tool set for managing and measuring implementation in the cloud. That's the business transformation suite, particularly the cloud ALM product. It's interesting because when one of the hyperscalers, owned by a guy named Bezos. No, anyway, I didn't want to name names. When they were really starting to get into the ERP space, I did some consulting with them, and I approached them. I said, you know how you want to really stand out? You can build a tool set that really takes the data out of the cloud. I mean, you can watch everything in the cloud, absolutely every keystroke, everything. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. That's a different problem. But use the data you have from implementing and managing cloud to, and this is where this could be real AI, to actually now look at where do things go wrong, where do things go right, how do I develop a set of immutable best practices around implementation. You could do that. Wouldn't that be cool? And they're like, yeah, nah, we're just going to sell some software. But I think the vendors really need to stand up and say, I am going to take a stake in my customer success, and I'm going to take responsibility for my customers' failure. There's nothing. Everyone thinks that transparency and accountability are a great idea until, of course, you say, well, but that applies to you too, and then they sort of run away. But I think the vendors need to do that, and they need to drag these particularly these big global SI partners into that as well, because they're all, everyone's getting a free pass and the customer's suffering. All right, 5-minute warning. So last one. Actually, I already said that one. Yeah, we already did the last one.
Let's circle a bit back to the customers on this one. Yeah. I mean, the definition of success means you need to be able to measure it, means you need to have stated what success is, and you need to have a couple of KPIs for that. Isn't it aren't customers part of the problem by not defining what they mean with success?
They're at the end of the day, I think the vendor is the adult supervision, or should be, in this world. You're right. The customers are, and that's why I sort of started by picking on the customers. They have to change their culture in terms of being able to really drive drive the vendor and partner towards success and insist on a metrics-driven success model. But they also have to learn how to do that.
Yeah, they've been bombarded with information on what they're told is success. How do you fight back against that when everything you can read, everything you can discuss says success looks like this, when that success is driven by sales of another company?
Success is you're running Copilot in your, No, Marshall, you're 100% correct. And so this is an education problem, and it's also, there's sort of a Stockholm syndrome about this. We have been in the industry for so long, watching these projects fail for so long, that we're sort of used to it.
Yeah. Project failure is a joke among analysts.
Yeah, and it's a punchline, right? In a way, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah. So, but then again, so the vendors are not interested, the customers are not incentivized or educated. Is that the genuine job of a consultant then?
Yeah, including the four of us. I mean, this is our job. In a way, I think as sort of the kind of universal bullshit meter for the industry is to say, this is maybe to me the most important thing that we should be doing as people working, as translators in between this tech and this business world and this vendor and this customer world that we live in, is to really take, sort of kind of push this issue a little bit harder than maybe we are. And I've tried and I failed, I'll admit, but that, that to really help customers understand that it is actually within their power to demand that their success is part of the contract, not the vendor's success, their success. And the contracting is one of the big problems, because most vendors are not, most customers are not don't have professional legal teams, and all they do, unless you're very, very large, all they do is write software contracts all day long. Whereas every vendor, that's what they have. And you get the general purpose counsel in the room with the guys who've been doing, these contracts. Slick Willie's been doing these contracts for 20 years, and you're going to be outmanned or outwomaned in that. But that should be a demand that is incontrovertible. My success has to be built into the contract according to my terms. And if I don't know what my terms are, then I'm going to hire a consultant that's going to help me figure out what is success on my terms.
Yeah. Which leads to an interesting follow-up or sequel, basically. You started with it takes 3 to tango, not 2, but 3 in this instance.
Well, someone's got to play the music.
Yep. And I mean, there's plenty of chance to point at each other in this triangular relationship. The customer says it didn't work. You vendor are the problem. The vendor looks at the SI and says you are the problem because you implemented a sketchy thing. And the SI says, yeah, well, the requirements description was kind of not so good. So how to mitigate that then? In this scenario?
I think at the end of the day, that's where I started with the customer, because the customer has to sort of step up, point blank.
So you're not selling me what I need to be sold.
We're going to start this relationship, me and you, the vendor, with, we need to define success according to what matters to me, and we're going to set up a bunch of metrics for that, and we're going to hold you to it. And in fact, I would like you, the vendor, to tell me how you're incenting your sales force to get the bonus when I'm a success and not when you've cashed the check. I think the customer has more power than they've exercised, and I think they need to get in gear, get in the driver's seat, actually, instead of letting themselves be driven around by this vendor partner dyad that's not working for them.
ultimately the law of the affected applies here, because the customer is the ultimate affected one. They are the ones who spend the money, so they have highest interest in getting it done their way.
Right. Yeah. They don't want to be you don't want to be living in this world of I'm spending all this money, I'm growing my spend, and I'm not getting anything out of it. Yet this is what we've been doing, not just for this century, but ever since I've been in the industry, since the 1980s. So, at this point, I think we need sort of, there are certain vendors, Acumatics is a good one, Zoho's another one, that really talk about, what's in it for the customer. They are sincere. They're the outliers. And in those, for those other vendors, customers, you're going to have to get your vendor to start thinking this way. And that's because they're not going to do it by themselves. They're too driven by, I think, by Wall Street and by, by their own, frankly, their own bad habits.
Yeah. Which basically makes sure that we don't need a question for the famous last words, because those have been great famous last words.
Yeah. Well, it's been an hour of
something good. All right. Yay. Let's close it out. Well, thank you very much for letting me rant for an hour. I've been in a mood.
We enticed that ranting.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you.
We sort of prodded the beast.
I certainly feel smarter than when we started. So I'd say
we love
something good.
Okay, Marshall, we'll talk later. You're already pretty smart. But thank you again. This has been a lot of fun for me, and have me back some other time. I'd love to do this.
You bet.
Sure. So that's it for this one. Josh, again, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure and always a learning experience.
Likewise.
So also thank you to our audience. We appreciate you, and we hope to hear more from you every week. Tune in next week, if you will, when we will be continuing the great AI debate with John Reed and Dr. Michael Wu.
That'll be a good one.
That'll be an epic one again. Yeah.
Yes, that'll okay.
Wow, you guys, fourth installment.
I'll tune in for that one for sure.
Well, we thank you for that.
Okay.
Yeah, it is cool. And we want to go for our ride that time.
Yeah. So until next week, thank you all very much.
And see you soon.
Be safe and be well.
Take care. Be with us next Tuesday.